If you and I were to ask any Christian, what do you believe? Think about all the different directions those answers could go. Somebody could start with the Old Testament, the New Testament. Maybe somebody would begin with God the Father. Maybe somebody would talk about what they're learning in their church, the Bible. What about the person of Jesus? Well, those are a lot of different aspects of our faith. What a number of people did in the past, theologians, is they took different aspects of our belief system and they just kind of put them in order to give us some hooks to understand what we believe and why we believe it. So if we study that system of theology, it's called systematic theology, we have to have a jumping off point. So today I want to begin with theology. What is theology? In the New Testament, there's a Greek word. The New Testament was written in Greek. So if we kind of peel back the English, there's always going to be a Greek letter underneath. Some of y'all remember Polaroid cameras. You take that outer film off and all of a sudden the color and the light of the picture comes out. It's the same thing with the New Testament. If we kind of uncover the English words, what's underneath? Theos is the Greek word for God. Well, what is ology? We know from grade school up that ology is the study of something. So theology is the study of theos, the study of God. Well, what are some things we know about God? This may blow you away, but it's true. When the Old Testament and New Testament authors were writing Scripture, they did not have any letters in bold. They wouldn't underline letters, no italicized letters. They didn't have exclamation points. They didn't have parentheses, quotations. It was just a bunch of letters. Well, if you were an Old Testament or New Testament author and you wanted to emphasize or underscore one point in particular, how would you really, really, really drive that point home? You would do it through emphasis or repetition, okay? One word that's repeated about God in the Old Testament is we would say God is holy, holy, holy. That means He's incredibly holy. What is holy? Holy means that which is separate from the ordinary or profane. In other words, a really pure, unblemished God can't come in contact with anything outside His nature. Well, I'm not going to go too far ahead, but think about this. If we have a really holy God who can't come in contact with anything ordinary, profane, sinful, well, you and I know ourselves. We know our hearts. If you ever question the sinfulness of humanity, have kids. I mean, at the earliest age, know, mind, we see the sin nature coming out. So if we have a really holy God and really sinful men, how are those two going to come together? Come on. That is so cool in the person of Jesus. But just stick with me. We're going to get there later. When it comes to theology, God is holy, holy, holy. We've already said that. I would give you some homework too. Here's something we know about God. In Psalm 19, verses 1 to 6, we're told that when we look outside, when we see the created order, we know there's somebody or something out there. The Bible's very specific. There are no atheists. Even the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Meaning everybody knows there's somebody or something out there. This just didn't magically appear. So Psalm 19, verse 1, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, the expanse, the handiwork of His hands. In other words, we know that He's out there. Okay, well, how do we come to know that we know that we know who that God is? Starting in verse 7 to 14, we're told how to know the one true God through His law, through the Word, through the commandments, through the Scripture. So we have general revelation, there's a God out there. Special revelation through the Scriptures, we can come to know Him in a personal way. I'd ask you to go read Psalm 19 and you'll see the general and then the special. One other thing I meant to include. Okay, just give me 1 second. In the Old Testament, God had a really, He had a personal name, and it was called Yahweh, YHWH. A lot of Old Testament manuscripts, you'll see all these letters, And then out of nowhere, you'll see these 4 dots. Well, what did those 4 dots represent? YHWH. There were no vowels. I'm throwing a lot at you, but stick with me. Okay, the Jewish scribes had so much respect for God's, remember what kind of name? For God's holy name, that they were fearful of taking his name lightly. So when they were writing the Old Testament, a lot of manuscripts have these 4 dots. They wouldn't even utter God's name. They wouldn't write God's name. In fact, some scribes would take a ceremonial bath to cleanse themselves before they wrote the 4 dots, a ceremonial bath afterwards. Again, just the respect for God's name. One other thing that's pretty cool, they wouldn't say Yahweh out loud. They would say Hashem, which means the name. The name says, thou shalt not kill. The name says. That's how much respect that they had for God and his name. Okay, I'll leave you with this right now for theology. How is Christ going to come into the picture? Christology. We got to back up a little bit and talk about anthropology, the problem with man. We've already talked about theology, the holiness of God. Come on, you see where this is going. Holy God, sinful man, perfect Redeemer. He is going to connect us to the holy God. But stay tuned, a lot more is coming next week about anthropology, the study of man. Thank you.